The article that we've been discussing for several days right here, will Alabama's Jalen Hurts soon become the biggest free agent in college football history? It was written on the Bleacher Report. Matt Hayes has been in the business a long time. Matt, welcome into the game here in Tuscaloosa. I hope you're doing well.
Doing great, Ryan. How are you?
Hey, very good, very good. And Matt, I was trying to, obviously your name speaks for itself, but you've been in the business for what, I would guess 30 years that you've been in the business?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
And so we were talking, because you see these articles from time to time, and they're not what they sort of claim, but as we were talking about it Thursday and Friday, I mean, obviously you've been in the business a long time. A lot of these were direct quotes, and they've been a major conversation here. Let me ask you, as you look back at your article, what was the number one takeaway after talking with Jalen Hurts' father from your perspective?
The number one takeaway?
Number one takeaway from what you maybe were surprised or what you learned from Jalen Hurts' father.
I don't know that I was surprised, but I think the number one takeaway was Jalen's dad telling his son, look, you brought this on yourself, now you got to fix it. So, I mean, he was very clear about that, and Jalen's been very clear about that to him, that he knows it, and that's what it is. I mean, the reality is, had Jalen played well in that championship game, he wouldn't be in this point right now. So that's where they stand right now. They're not blaming anybody. They know whose fault it is. Jalen knows whose fault it is. His dad knows whose fault it is, and it's up to Jalen to make it better. Simple as that.
Today we're discussing Jalen Hurts' performance on Saturday, and we've been talking a lot about the confidence, because when you get pulled in the national championship game, it has to be a earth-shattering moment for confidence, and it looks like he lacked that on Saturday afternoon.
You know what? I don't know that I would go that far, Ryan. I think you have to look at, it's a lot more than just a guy going back there and throwing the ball. Okay, I think you've got to look at the fact that Alabama defensive line is going to be very, very good. They were overwhelming the offensive line, an offensive line that Nick has stated in the past has been struggling in camp, and the defensive line won that day and won it very handily, actually. So if you're getting pressure, and it's a lot hard to let go of something. A lot harder to go through your progressions if you're getting pressure and you're getting knocked out of rhythm. So I don't know that I would put too much stock in that game. And I mean for either quarterback. And I hear a lot of people talking about Mack Wilson. Mack Wilson's going against the twos. He's not going against what could be the best defense in college football. So I think you gotta pull back a little bit from that. I think you also got to look at what Blake Sims, 3 or 4 years ago, looked awful in that spring game, then ended up setting tons of Alabama passing records in the fall. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that.
The quote that I think grabbed us that you label in here, and it was from Jalen Hurts' father, and he said, well, he'd be the biggest free agent in college football history, end quote. Talk about that and sort of the way that he said it, because we're kind of playing that he's not going to accept a backup role here in Tuscaloosa, whether that's fair or not. That's the kind of the way that we took that.
Well, I think Jalen's not. I think there was this whole narrative in our society now. With be it social media, be it people just saying things that aren't attributed to anyone, and this stuff starts to get rolling. And there was this narrative that Jalen was going to change positions because he's a good guy and he'll do what's best for the team, and he'll sit back, he'll take a step back, and that's just not who Jalen is. I said Jared, I'm sorry. It's just not who Jalen is, and that's what I tried to show in the story, that if you think he's just going to step back and not compete and not try and win this job, you're crazy. And he's not changing positions. He doesn't want to be a tight end. He doesn't want to be an H-back. He doesn't want to be a receiver or a tailback. He wants to be a quarterback. So that was really what the article was about. It was about this kid who has done so much for Alabama. He's now in a situation where, 2 quarters of how he played in a championship game, how can that overshadow 2 seasons of what he did for them? So he's not giving up. It's simple as that.
Let me ask you, what do you see, in your opinion, that Jalen needs to improve the most on?
I mean, I think Jalen needs to improve on what all quarterbacks need to improve on. I think it's a decision-making. I think it's a lot of the little things that quarterbacks have to grow with and learn and understand. You're talking about a guy that's has had 4 different offensive coordinators, 4 different quarterback coaches. So I think at some point you got to say, okay, let's see what happens when he gets with a system where he's got the same guy, the same people, when he's got a specific quarterback coach, which is what he has now with Dan Enos, and a specific offensive coordinator. Let's see what happens then. He he needs to improve on the same things all quarterbacks need to improve on. It's simple as that. Get rid of the ball quicker, make smart decisions, protect the ball. And Nick is a guy who, you guys know this. He says it all the time. Every drive should end in a kick, be it a punt, a field goal, or an extra point. And I think that is the most valuable thing for any quarterback in Nick Saban. And that's been proven over and over and over by the quarterbacks he's had at Alabama.
Matt, just your opinion. What do you think happens?
I don't know, because we don't know where Tua is. We don't know the extent of Tua's injury. So I don't think any of us knows that. I think we're gonna play it out in the fall camp, and you're gonna see how who has worked well in the summer, who comes ready, and who comes prepared, and who's healthy. And I think you'll see a different type of competition in fall camp.
How much would the demand be if Jalen decided to transfer? How many places would raise their hand and say, "Man, I'd love to have a guy that is 26-2"?
Everyone. I mean, everyone. I wouldn't. I'd be shocked if, I can imagine a lot of teams would be interested in the kid who's done what he's done at the highest level in college football, and who is not only that, but who's a great locker room guy, who's a great leader. I mean, there are coaches that would do backflips for a guy like him.
Do you see this as a management issue for Nick Saban? I mean, do you see this as something that he's going to have to juggle and kind of have to get in front of?
Of course he is, but I mean, it's number one, is what he gets paid for. Number two, he's a really smart guy. He's going to make the right decision, and he understands it's a business. And Jalen's father understands it's a business. Nick has to do what's best for his team. Jalen's dad and Jalen have to do what's best for Jalen. So it's not like, there's really no, it's really not all that controversial, to tell you the truth, right? It's a simple business decision. And Nick has proven over and over that he knows how to handle quarterbacks and deal with quarterbacks, because he's had successful quarterbacks over and over in that program. Guys that, a lot of times guys that hadn't played the year before hadn't played in 2 or 3 years. So he knows what he's doing, and he'll make a decision, and then Jalen and his dad will make a decision, after that happens.
Just after talking with his father and trying to get a little bit of a feel, you don't think this is something that, is going to happen anytime soon? I mean, you think this will go into fall camp, right?
No, Ryan, I think Jalen's trying to win the job. I don't think there's any question about it. I don't think he's going to leave before fall camp starts. No, he's trying to win the job.
Matt, let me ask you, when you look at Alabama's schedule, it kind of gives them a little bit of flexibility here, that even though we're talking about Louisville and Alabama, they really don't have to have a starting quarterback, because this schedule does not look very challenging from our seat here in T-Town.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you can look at it that way, but I would imagine, given Nick's history, he's going to want a guy that's going to be his starter. He's going to name his starter, and the team can kind of coalesce around. So I would imagine that you're going to find out who the starter is once the season begins pretty quickly.
And it looks like, as you talked about that defense, it seems to be, as we always go into the season going, how in the world can he replace all these new coaches, all the first-rounders that will be in the draft this coming weekend? It looks like it's another typical Nick Saban-style defense that's forming here in T-Town.
Yeah, and that's another thing, too. And I kind of want to backtrack a little bit as well, Ryan, because, I said the offensive line has struggled, but, I mean, it's going to be a pretty good offensive line, but you're dealing with a defense that is, again, going to be one of the best, if not the best, in college football. So I don't know if I would throw too much, or I should say lay too much shade on the offensive line, because they got some very good players in that offensive line. And I think it's just a matter of those guys getting together and kind of forming and gelling a little bit. They're going to be very good. That D-line, though, is, wow. Just, to me, and I tweeted this out on Saturday, and everybody said I was an idiot, but to me, potentially, it could be the best pass rush they've had.
It's kind of funny that you say that, because you look at Raekwon Davis. I mean, I had a chance to just be up close on Saturday to him, and I'm going, as many guys as we've seen, monsters come through Alabama, that guy may be the physical-looking specimen that I've ever seen. I was just like 6'7", and he looks unblockable at times. And we're not talking about chopped liver on that offensive line. They've got some guys. They only lost one offensive line. He got one injured with Matt Womack that was not going through this spring, but that's a pretty solid offensive line that he was going up with, some very proven guys at several different positions.
Yeah, it's right, and it's you focus on the D line because that's what we always focus on with Alabama. But those linebackers, considering where they were in the Auburn week to where they are now, I mean, those guys can run, and we all know how Nick loves to get those guys involved in the pass rush too. So, believe me, they're going to be very good in the way they get after the quarterback in the fall.
We learned last Thursday when Nick Saban spoke to us, obviously he had a comment about was asked a question about the article and even talked about meeting with Jalen's father. Will you set us straight? The meeting that you had with Jalen's father and the conversation that you guys had was prior to that meeting. So it was not last week. It was the previous week that you said.
Previous week.
Yeah. Okay. I just
Correct.
wanted to put that on.
Correct. The interview with his father was the previous week.
Okay. And you think there'll be a follow-up or anything follow-up? Because, I thought it was a great insight because it's one that really we haven't heard a lot from.
No, I would imagine that, his father has said what he wants to say. Jalen clearly has not said anything because I think it's not only because Nick doesn't want the quarterback talk, but I don't think either one of those guys want to talk either. I think they just want to zero in on what they're doing. So, no, I wouldn't anticipate a follow-up now.